Hello, everybody. This is Brett Lonsdale, the founder of Lightning Tools. I just want to welcome everybody to the webinar this afternoon, where we're going to be taking a look at the Lightning Tools Form Designer Suite. And that's going to involve looking at three different products. One is Lightning Forms. There's also the Document Generator and Lightning List Actions. So all of these products are available independently, with the exception of the document generator. So I guess I should say both of them. So the Lightning Tools List Actions and also the Form Designer Lightning Tools Forms is available independently, but yeah, the document generator is an add-on to those two products. So first of all, I just want to welcome everybody to the call. We're going to be around about an hour. The webinar is going to be recorded. There's going to be time at the end to ask questions. If you would like to ask questions in the Q&A panel throughout, feel free to do so, and I'll make sure that they're addressed at the end of the webinar today as well. Yeah, first of all, I just want to do a very quick intro to Lightning Tools and who we are for those that are unfamiliar with us, and then we're going to introduce the topic for today of being those three different products. So yeah, first of all, Lightning Tools, we're a company based in the UK. We're headquartered just outside of the town of Rugby, and we've been established for just over 15 years now. So it's actually our birthday this week. 15 years we've been developing products for Microsoft SharePoint. Originally, of course, this predates Microsoft 365. So we've been building products for SharePoint Server, and of course moved on to SharePoint Online, and now into Microsoft Teams as well. So the products that we provide are around areas such as permissions management. There's also content aggregation, so you can build reports on SharePoint list content, but also other content from Microsoft 365 as well, such as OneDrive and Teams and things like that. We also have a discussion board tool, which really complements Teams and SharePoint in terms of categorizing your discussions. So you can have a sort of Q&A panel and build a community of experts. We also have data integration tools for displaying data from external systems inside of SharePoint. And of course, the three products that we're going to be taking a look at today, which is the List Form Designer, List Actions, and also the Document Generator. So let's talk about those tools now. So first of all, we're going to first of all have a look at what the Form Designer Suite is. So we'll introduce those three different products. We're also going to take a look at a solution. Now, typically when I've done a Lightning Forms webinar, I've always started off with a blank canvas, and we've built the form as we go through. But I realize there's actually quite a bit to show you today when we're trying to accomplish three different products. So I'm going to start off with showing you a final solution, and then we're going to have a look at what brought that solution together, and then we're going to reset everything, and I'll show you how we can very quickly sort of get up to speed with building a form from scratch. And we're also, well, in order to do that, we're going to be taking a look at the Lightning Tools or Lightning Forms. We're going to have a look at the document generator and also the list actions. All three of those products are going to be part of this solution. And as I mentioned, right at the very end, there's going to be a Q&A. So feel free to have your questions ready in the Q&A panel, or also in the chat as well. So Form Designer Suite, first of all, it's made up, like I say, of those three products. Can be the first two can be independently used. So we've got the Lightning Forms, which is the product that is going to be used for designing the form itself. There's also Lightning List Actions, which can be used for building command bar actions inside your SharePoint list views, and that can be a series of actions that are run against a single item or multiple items inside your SharePoint lists. And we've also got the document generator, which can take a SharePoint list item either from in Lightning Forms or from within inside a Lightning List Actions button and generate you a Word document. Of course, that Word document can then be shared, it can be printed, it can be saved as a PDF and that type of thing. So let's have a look at what each of the different products do as a summary, and then we'll have a good demonstration of each of them. So first of all, from Lightning Tools perspective, this is a product where you can take a standard SharePoint list or multiple SharePoint lists, as you're going to see in the demo today, and you can change the layout, first of all. So If you imagine what a standard SharePoint list form looks like, it's just a series of different fields from top to bottom, one column wide, and you end up having to scroll up and scroll down through numerous fields. So what we can do with Lightning Forms is change that layout. We can go for a wider side panel. It can be full screen if you like, or it can be half of your screen. It can be as big as you want. And we can control where those fields sit on the form. So you can drag and drop the fields around, not just to change the order, but also to have multiple columns. So you can have 1, 2, or 3 columns. You can have a mixture of both. So you can have one section where the form is in 3 columns and another section where it's in 1 column. You can also have tabs as well in order to sort of group different types of fields together. So for example, somebody's address, like a customer address section, is made up of several fields. All of those fields could be grouped underneath an address tab, for example. So we've got tabs for controlling layout. You can also add business logic as well. So business logic can come in the form of calculations. Those calculations can be used to set initial values for fields. It could be calculated values for fields once the user has input something. They can also be used for validation. We can do cascading lookups with calculations and all sorts of things like that. We can also add actions to our form as well. So actions could be things like sending emails or setting field values, like changing a status to approved or something along those lines. And these can be behind the buttons inside the form, so on the command bar of the form, or they can also be form load actions as well, where you add some logic before the form or after the form is loaded. And we'll be taking a look at that as well today. And then we can also add styling and conditional formatting to our form. So if you want things to stand out to the user as they're completing the form, this is something else that we can do to highlight any issues with the form or bring the user's attention to a certain area of the form. And you can do all of this stuff without having to write a single line of code, but there is also the ability to write code if you want to. So if you wanted to extend the capability with some of your custom JavaScript, then you can do that as well. And I'll be showing you an example of what can be achieved today using JavaScript as well. So that's Lightning Forms. With Lightning List Actions, this is where we can add command bar buttons to the list view itself. And this allows us to run a series of actions against either a selected item or multiple items inside your list. So the selected item would run against the item that you literally did select, and the button wouldn't show unless you did select an item, and it would run against that item. Or you could select multiple items or all items in a view and run the actions against that. So again, this could be things like updating field values. It could be sending an email to somebody that is mentioned inside the form, or somebody that created the form, something along those lines. Yeah, all sorts of different actions, and we'll be taking a look at what the sort of actions are that you could go through and build. And this again can be done without having any code. So the actions are pre-built. You can use the actions, you can wrap them into conditions if you want to without having to know any code logic at all. But again, if you wanted to extend it with code, you can. There is that option to include some JavaScript if you want to. And yeah, it's simple to implement, and you can also control who or what type of role would be able to see or click your button as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be there for everybody. If you imagine, for example, you create an approve button, it'd be fairly tempting to be able to select all my expense items and click approve. I wouldn't want to be able to do that unless I actually was an expense approver. So we could hide that button from anybody that is not an expense approver based on groups that they're a member of or properties inside their profile. Then finally, we're going to take a look at the document generator. And this is the product that will work with the list actions, or it will also work with Lightning Forms. And what you can basically do is take a SharePoint list item with all the fields that are inside that list item and generate a Microsoft Word document from that list item. So this is going to fit in really nicely with today's demonstration, where we're actually going to be creating a purchase order system. So you can imagine, once we've processed a purchase order inside our business, we may want to actually send that purchase order to the vendor, to the supplier, so that they can actually invoice us and ship our goods, etc. So that's an example. We don't just want to invite them to our SharePoint tenant where they can look at the list item. We want them to have a physical copy, and that's the sort of thing that we're going to be doing with this demonstration today, is generate that purchase order document, and then it can be printed, it can be stored inside the document library, it can even be sent to the customer, and so on. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at building forms. So the form that we're going to build, this is an actual screenshot of the form that we're going to build today. So this is the purchase order form. And I'm going to show you the form where it started life, which is going to be an uncustomized form. So you will just see that series of different fields in one column format. But as you can see from the screenshot, and I won't spend too long looking at the screenshot because you'll be able to see it live in a moment, that we've got a bit more going on in here. We've got multiple tabs where there's fields under each of these tabs. We've got buttons on the form that may do certain things, maybe redirecting us to different tabs or populating fields, things like approval and so on. We also have a sub list as well. So this allows me to actually have a sort of one-to-many type join. So when we're issuing a purchase order, you don't normally just have one item on the purchase order. You know, if you're ordering from us, you don't have to just order one product, just saying. So you could order the Lightning conductor, you could also order Lightning forms, and there's 2 items that you're going to put inside this purchase order items bit on one purchase order. And if you want to practice that, feel free to do so. Yeah, in here, we're going to look at how this form was built. But as you can see, the logic and the layout has been changed. So we've got side-by-side columns instead of one column format. We've got the tab controls. We've got some styling going on in here. We've also got a sub list, and we've got some action buttons. So all of that we're going to look through right now. So let's go into SharePoint. And you should hopefully see my communication site for Lightning Tools. And what we're going to do is just jump into this purchasing site here, which is where we're going to be working today. So in here, we've got a purchase order list, and this is the main one that we're going to be working with today. You can see I've already got a purchase order created in here. Yeah, when I hit new, this is opening up my purchase order form, and I'm going to talk you through this. We're going to first of all create an item in here, and then we're going to pick it apart inside the designer and have a look at how that was built. But just to introduce you to a few of the lists, we've also got some purchase order items. This is going to be part of our solution today. So when you create a purchase order, these are the items that could go into those purchase orders or have gone into those purchase orders. We've also got a list of vendors that we're going to be looking up from. So these could be approved vendors for our organization, and you can see that they all fall into different categories. So we've got some vendors that provide office equipment, some provide hardware and software and electrical services and so on. So we've got all of their address details, and we can look up from this. And what we're going to do there is build a cascading lookup from the purchase order form. And we've also got something going on with the document library as well. So inside the document library, notice there is a purchase orders folder, and we've got some documents inside this folder, which is actually generated from the document generator. So this is going to create our purchase order document, store it inside the document library so we can send that to the customer. We don't actually have to send it manually. We can do that as part of Lightning Forms as well, which is what we're going to be doing. And finally, we're also going to sign off these purchase orders as well. So we'll be collecting signatures inside a signatures library. Okay, so let's jump into the purchase order first of all. And what you'll notice when I go into Lightning Forms from the command bar here, it's a great start, just bear with me. Let's give this a little refresh. There we go. So when we go into Lightning Forms, you'll see here that there's 3 forms that make up this list. We've got the new form.aspx, which is used for creating new SharePoint list items. We also have the edit form, which is of course used for editing existing list items. And we have the display form, which is used for reading list items. The first 2 you'll be able to see that I've customized because it says edit customization and not customize. So I'm going to show you first of all the display form, since that has not been customized. So I will click onto an existing item, and this is the form that you should all be familiar with, completely uncustomized, and you just got that list of different fields with inside that single side panel. So you can see the level to which we've customized this one. So when I hit new, we've got a much wider side panel, and we've got some logic and layout stuff going on inside of here. So we'll fill one out. You'll notice that first of all, we've got a purchase order number, and it says here that the PO number is going to be created upon saving. So I can't actually click into that. Despite being in the new form, there's nothing I can do with that field. That's just going to be there for show, and it's going to be storing the purchase order number once I do hit save. We've also got a default value set on the date. So this is the date of the purchase order. We've also defaulted the user as well, which is the account that I'm signed in as, Lightning Tools. And over here on the right hand side, we've got a reason for filling out this purchase order. So I'm going to put a broken laptop. Need a new one. Hopefully it's not broken because I need to get through this webinar. Yeah, I'll put that as the reason. And then down here in these different tabs, I can go through and select, first of all, my vendor. Now, notice that we've only seen one of each category, and there was multiple of each category. So we've got a cascading lookup here. So when I choose computer hardware over on the vendor list, you can tell this is a demo already. All right, so anyway, that's going to limit the choices for my vendors based on the vendor type. So we'll be selecting that, and then we've also got the vendor email, which I'm going to put in here, which is brett@lightningtools.com. Okay, so there's the fields filled out so far. I'm going to jump to the Ship To tab. So we've got a button to control that access, and in here we can choose who it's going to be shipped to. So I'll put myself, Brett Lonsdale, and I'm going to, instead of filling out all these fields, since the vast majority of orders are probably going to come to the Lightning Tools headquarters, I'm just going to click this button here, and that is going to fill in all these fields for me. So you can see I've got the address already completed, and now I just need to set things like how it's going to get to me, what the shipping method is, shipping terms, and the requested delivery date. Okay, so those two are filled out. We've then got a third tab, which is the total. So we're going to see a subtotal of all the items. Of course, that's empty at the moment because there aren't any items. And then we'll also be able to track the status as well, so whether this is approved or not, and so on. So down here under the purchase order items, we can click onto new. That's opened up a new side panel. We can put in the item that I want. So we want a laptop. It's a 17-inch laptop. And we'll have just one of those. Unit price could be 1,000, and notice that that's giving me my line total there, which is calculated by Lightning Forms as well. And I'm just going to go through and create another item because I get a little bit carried away like this. While I'm in here, I'll get a mouse as well. I have a nice mouse, and we'll just have one of those. Maybe that's 50, and that's calculated too. So we've got our two items related to this purchase order. So when we go to the totals tab, you can see that that subtotal has been created. We've also got the sales tax on there as well, and the total amount. So now I'm ready for this to be submitted. Now, just to point out that I could save a draft. So that's not a standard button. We usually have a save and cancel, but this is save draft. I've also got the cancel button, and then I've also got a submit. So I'm going to hit my submit, and that is going to do more than just save. It's going to save it. It's also going to email it to the approver, and we should then get a message that's displayed to me prior to that item being saved. Okay, so there's our message, and that just appears for 5 seconds. There's some delays built in as well, so we can actually see that message, and then it closes. So all of that was automated there. So there's our PO, purchase order 7. And if I go in and edit that item, you can see the customized edit form. And one of the things I just want to bring your attention to is we've got a bit of styling going on. So you will notice that there's a subtle yellow border around the status. So if I go and click onto that, you can see the reason for this is it's currently pending. So as soon as that changes to approved, which I could actually do manually because I've not locked that field down. So as I change that to approved, that border goes green and so on. So I'm just going to change that back to pending because that's going to be automated to change that. So we could come in here as somebody that is an approver, and at the very top here you can see that we have got an approve button. We also have a request change button, and we've got a generate document, which we'll be looking at shortly, and we've also got a send to vendor as well. So if I wanted to approve this, I'm just going to click onto the approve button, and you'll notice that lots of fun is going on today. So yeah, that has changed the status to approved, and it's also set who the approved by. In fact, that message was the fact that I didn't sign it. So let me just go in and do that. I missed that part, so I didn't capture that that error message. So here under status, yeah, I can also sign this as well. So there we go, some form of signature, and let's just hit approve again. Okay, so that's some of the things that we can do with Lightning Forms. And let's have a look at how that's done now. So I'm going to jump into Lightning Forms, click onto Edit Customization on the new form. And you can see our form design has loaded. So the designer itself is contextual, meaning that we're in SharePoint. We're not going to get any surprises once we publish to SharePoint or anything like that. This is exactly how our form is going to look and feel. So the first thing that I changed on here was the form side panel size. So rather than having the medium size, which was the default for a SharePoint list, we've gone to large, but you still get that responsive form. So if you are on a small screen, it's still going to reduce down for you. The tabs just simply become on top of each other as opposed to side by side like they do on the larger screens. There's also some refinements in here that I'll show you. You can show or hide the properties panel when you're inside the list itself. You look at the properties for each item. You'll see things like the user access section, so who's got permissions to the item. Also, the properties will show all the different fields, so you can do sort of quick editing, and you can also see the activity of that item in there as well. So one of the things you might decide to do, if you're hiding certain fields, like on our form, we've got the approved field, you may need to be an approver in order to be able to change that. We don't want users to be able to change that in the properties panel. So I could lock down that properties panel by hiding it when you're inside the list. And that way I've got more control over who can modify that field. So there's some of the different things that you can do just inside the form settings there. We've then got a bit of rich text going on. So inside the rich text section, this is great for providing headers like I have. You've got all the different styling options that you can use, but also to be able to provide instructions on what to do with your form. And that includes this bit here. So make sure you do provide a reason for the purchase request, as that's going to improve your chances of getting it approved. So we can provide instructions on here. We've then got the styling going on and also the multi-column section. So you'll notice that you can, first of all, add new sections. So when you add a section, it could be 1, 2, or 3 columns. You can control that for existing sections as well. And inside those sections, notice that we've got the fields and you can move those around. So if you wanted to reposition them, you can do that just simply by dragging and dropping. And in here, you can also add some of the fields back in that you may have removed. So these are all the different columns that reside inside the underlying list. And we can also add new columns as well if we want to inside that list. Okay, so the styling is done from up here. So we can go to the styling, and I wanted the purchase order number to really stand out. So you'll notice we've got general styles that I can apply to like all of the fields on the form. So if I wanted all of the fields to be a larger font or something like that. But down here, we've also got a style specifically set on the purchase order number field. And that can be conditional. And I'll show you some examples of the conditions in a moment. But what I've done here is just change the color of the field background to a light blue. And that light blue is not just a fixed color, it's coming from the theme color. So if I was to at one point change the theme of this site to a different color, that is going to be recognized as you change the theme on Lightning Forms. Okay, and we can always switch back to the default color if we want to as well. And we've also got a border set. You'll notice anything that we do change is wrapped in a orange rectangle, so that way it really stands out as to what we did change, so you can always put it back again if ever you want to. Okay, so there's a bit of styling going on there. Let's just save and close that. And we've also got in here some properties set. So this is the expression configuration that you can get to for every single field on your form. So you'll notice there's visible, enabled, initial, calculated, and also validation stuff like required and the validation rule. So in this particular instance, I've got an initial value set. And if we go into the expression builder, you can see we've got user.title. Now you don't need to know that most of the time. You can scroll down here under the context objects and get the user context. So that's the context of the current user that is filling out the form. And we can get to their user profile property. So if I just simply remove this user title, I can drop it straight back in again by just double clicking on the login name or the title if I want that property, and so on. If you want the user's email address, you can double click onto the email, etc. So you don't need to know the functions or the values that would be required for setting some of these fields. And using that user context, you can get things like the page variables, query string values, and that type of thing too. Over on the right here, we've got a date. And this is an example where if we go into this, you'll notice that before we used assignment, but this time we used function. So this is where you can actually write a bit of JavaScript. So this is just generating a new date using a date variable and then returning that date. So very simple bit of JavaScript in order to get the date into that field as well. Okay. And we've also then jumping down here, got the tabs. So the tabs can be easily added onto your form. You can just simply come down here to the tab control. So there's tabs, we can add that, and then we can start adding how many tabs we need. And we'll do that when we go through and reset the form shortly. Okay, so under the vendor tab is a custom button. So you can drop buttons on the form instead. You don't have to have them on the command bar. And against this button, you'll notice that this has just got a simple action, which is redirect to tab. And when you use that action, you can just choose the tab that you want to redirect to. And that's a really good example of the sort of thing that you might want to put behind a form load event as well. If you want to control what tab is opened when you use the new form, or what tab is opened when you use the edit form or display form, and so on. Yeah, you don't have to have that behind a button, but I thought that'd be useful to navigate over here. And then under the ship to, we've got a button as well. So this is also a series of actions. You can see that it's saving the form. The reason why I save the form is to get the ID. And then we're also going through and setting some of those values for the default address. But yeah, the user could overwrite that if they wanted to. And another calculation that we've got here is to get the subtotal. And this is actually getting the subtotal by adding up all the related items from the purchase order item. So you'll notice as we go into the properties for that one, there's a fairly complex looking function, but again, you don't need to know it. So if we just remove that, I'll show you exactly how we got there. And that was by coming down to the sublist section in the expression builder against the sublist, which is the purchase order items. And under the line total field, we can expand that and double click onto sum. And that's how we get that function in there. And that would just simply total up all of the items from the line total and drop it into the subtotal. And then to get the grand total, we just, of course, adding those two values up with the subtotal and the sales tax. So really straightforward form to provide that sort of logic. And the last thing to take a look at on this one is on the command bar, we've got the save draft, which is just renamed. So in here, you can see it's just doing a save and cancel, and that's it. But if we were to look at the display name, it's just been changed to save draft to make it obvious that it's not actually going to submit the purchase order. So under submit here, if we go in and have a look at the configure actions, you can see that's doing a little bit more. So this is going to introduce to you actually some of the new things that we're releasing this month. So we've got a save form. We've then got a send email. This has changed quite a bit. You'll notice that we've got a bit more going on inside our send email action. So we can choose, of course, who this is being sent from. That's picking up from the current user to the a fixed email address. We've got a subject in there, and we've also got a body. And inside the body, you'll notice that we've got a rich text editor. So that we didn't have before, which meant you had to write all of your styling and hyperlinks and so on in HTML. Whereas now you've got all of that here inside the rich text editor, so you can build all of those, and you've got the expression builder in here to help you with that as well. You can also send attachments. You're going to see an example of sending an attachment, which is a document that the document generator generated. So you'll see that shortly. And we can also show the email content before it gets sent. So if I switch that on, we're going to see another side panel that pops up with the email. So if ever I want to tailor the email before sending it, that's something I can now do that we weren't able to do before. And the other option here is to actually send a copy of the, or store a copy of that sent email into the sent items of the sender. So quite a few improvements going on with that action. We're then showing a message. We're setting some field values in here. So we're creating the purchase order number, and we're also setting the status to pending, and then we're saving and closing the form twice for some reason. Okay, so that's all the different actions that we've got. You can see here there's a bunch more actions that we can do. There's a brand new one called copy document, which we'll be talking about shortly. There's move document. We can start workflows. We can add list items to other lists and that type of thing. All right, so that's our submit button that you saw. Okay, so let's just save and close that, and we'll take a look at the edit form. And this is going to start to introduce some of the document action stuff as well. So as we go back into Lightning Forms, let's click onto the edit form. And somebody has already asked this question: how do you sign the signature field? So you could sign that, of course, with, if I understand the question correctly, you can sign that with your finger on a touch screen or with a mouse, and so on. The way that we get the signature field on here is using some JavaScript, and I'll show you a little bit of that as we go through. So we've got, first of all, an approve button. This is one of the things that's unique on this, because we of course wouldn't want the approve button to be on the new form because it's not created the item yet. So it's only on the edit form or the display form where you'd want an approve button to be. But on this approve button, if we go in and customize those actions, we can go and take a look. And again, you just see that it's got the status equals approved. So using the set field value, so we can choose the field that we want to set and put the value in. That could be a more complex value using an expression if you want to. And then we've also got another one setting who it's approved by. So that's getting the login email address, and then it's sending an email once again to say that this has been approved, and it's notifying the requester of that. And then here's some script. So inside the script is where the trickery is going on for getting the signature pad. So that's just an example of the sort of thing that you can do. This bit here is actually saving the signature into the signatures document library. Yeah, there's some work in here to make sure that the file doesn't already exist, and if it does already exist, it'll overwrite that file using the JavaScript. And in order to actually load the signature, which is down here, so this is just simply a rich text control. So as I click into here, you can see that the rich text just says sign here, and it's giving it a div ID of sigpad. And as we go into the form load actions, you can see I've got an execute script and also a redirect in there as well. So the execute script is what's actually going through and creating that signature pad. So that's being created in here with some JavaScript, and then what we're doing with that save event is storing that signature. And then finally, we're just doing a simple redirect to the vendor tab within inside the form load. So whenever we go into the edit form, it will take us to that vendor tab there. Okay, so that's what's going on with our approve. We've got that one. Let's take a look at the generate document. So the generate document here, if we take a look at that action, So the generate document, as we click onto edit, you can see that this has a action of generate document. And if we take a look at it, you can see the document in question. So if I click onto edit template and open this up. So this is just opened up on my other screen. So I'm just going to drag that across. Okay, so this is my Word document, and there's nothing clever about this other than we've got placeholders on it. And the placeholders are the field names on our form. It's the underlying field name. So you can see in here, we've got some just random word text. This is date, requested by, and status, and so on. But we're referencing the field using the double square brackets. So I have a field called date. I have a field called requested by, a status, and so on. And it's not the display value that you're after. It's the underlying column name. And of course, we've got that sublist on our form as well, and that can contain multiple items. So we're actually looping through those items, as you can see here. So it's looping through purchase order items, which is the name of my sublist. And then we're getting the title, the quantity, the unit price, and the line total, and then we're ending that loop. So that just simply goes into that document, and that will be looped through for each item inside our sublist. So that is created as a standard Word document. It is then uploaded by clicking onto the upload new template, and we can go through and access that now. So this is an improvement. You'll notice that here under the M document generator is the library where that purchase order template is stored. So this allows you to go and access all of your templates once you've created them, because of course you might have multiple different types of documents associated with one form. So then we're going through and telling it which item to open up with that particular template. So when you click that button, it's working against a single item. You've got the choice of working with multiple items. So that would be beneficial if you were working inside your list with Lightning List Actions to actually be able to select multiple purchase orders and generate documents. But yeah, I'm just working with the one single item. And if I'm working with one single item, I choose the library or the list. So it's purchase order. The ID recognizes this is the current ID, the current item that I'm in, and then I'm saving these out to a document library. So I've got the save to document library into a library called documents, into a subfolder called purchase orders, and the file name is kept unique by grabbing the title, which is the purchase order number, and the vendor, and concatenating those. Okay, so very simple action to use. So I'm going to show you how that is used. Let's just save and close our form. Okay, so we'll edit purchase order number 6. And so in here we can generate the document. So as I hit the generate document button, that has done its job. We could also write a message back to the user to say that it's done its job. If I open up the document library into purchase orders, we can see P06 del DOCX is the brand new document generated a few seconds ago. So I can open that up, and there we go. So we've got our purchase order document with the laptop that we ordered, and so on. Okay, so it doesn't look too nice unless I open that up in the Word document for some reason. Okay, so so that's our document being created using the document generator. So the other thing that we could do is add that also into Lightning List Actions as well. So let's jump into Lightning List Actions and see how this can be used. So List Actions is very similar to creating your command bar actions inside the form, except for that you're doing it inside the list itself. So we can add a command bar button on the lists command bar. So next to where you've got the new button and so on, we can create our buttons there. One of the benefits is of using list actions to do this is you can actually control when it's going to be visible or when it's going to be enabled as well. So this could be based on what SharePoint group or Active Directory group you're in, or what user profile properties against your particular profile as to whether that button would show up for you or not. We can make the actions conditional, and yeah, basically we can string a series of actions together to provide some updates. So we'll go through and build an approval action. So let's just do that. If I just Alt tab back into SharePoint. So at the moment, I don't have any custom actions inside this particular form. So we've just got this this one here, this item that I want to work with, and you'll notice that on here we're not seeing any sort of custom action buttons in relation to that item. So in order to create one, we can go into Lightning List Actions. And as you can see, there's no list actions yet. We're going to create our first list action. And this list action can have a display value. So we're going to go through and provide that with a name of approve. So the approve will be alongside an icon. So I'll choose an icon for this one. There's all sorts of different icons that we could select. I'll just go with this check here. And then I can choose when this button is going to be visible. So is it going to be visible for the current list? So do I just need to be in the list, or is it when I select a single item, or is it when I select multiple items? So if your action doesn't or shouldn't work against multiple selected items, then choose the selected item. But if you also want to be able to bulk approve multiple items, we would go with selected items, and your button will be available under that condition. So the visible expression would allow me to specify when this button is going to be visible. So one of the ideal features that you can use here is under user. Again, we can select is member of group or is member of AAD group, the Azure Active Directory group. So if we just want to use SharePoint groups for this, I could put in here a purchase order approver as a name of a group. And like with all functions in the expression builder, you can test them against an existing item. The item itself is not going to matter here. It's just actually checking whether or not I am a member of that group or not. And you can see that this is returning false. I'm not a member of that group. Okay, so we'll just take that out for now. But that's how we could go through and hide that if we wanted to. When we configure the actions, what we can do here is come down to the update item. So I'm going to double click onto update item. That'll add that action to the action builder. We can specify the list, so it could be in a different site or the current site. We're going to work with one in this site. In this site, so it's the purchase order. The ID is going to be the ID of the item that I have selected, and then we can choose what fields we want to go through and update. So I'm looking for the status. So in here, we can just simply write the word approved, and approved by, we're going to go through and get the context of the current user again. So we'll get the login name of the current user. That's who it'll be approved by. Okay, and then once we've done that, I'm going to use another reload, which would mean that we don't have to do a page refresh to see the results. Okay, so once I've okayed that and saved it, let's let the page build. You'll notice here that as I select an item, there's my approve button. So I could say approve purchase orders or whatever if we want to, and it doesn't go away if I have two purchase orders selected. I can bulk approve now. Saying the field is read only, but yeah, we could bulk approve those items if I wanted to using that. Okay, and of course that would set the approval status to approved. Okay, so that is list actions, and we've also seen the document generator. There's one other button that I want to focus on. That's with the send email action, which is a brand new action. So I'm just going to go back into SharePoint for a moment. Okay, and let's load up Lightning Forms, and I'm going to go into the edit form. Okay, and the button that we're going to take a look at is this one here, which is the send to vendor. So once again, we'll go into the command bar actions and edit the send to vendor, and we'll click on the configure actions, and you can see that we're just doing two actions. One is a send email, the other one is a show message. If I have a look at the send email action, it's being sent from the current user to the vendor's email. So that's the email on the form. That's just simply picking up the vendor email field here. And it says, please find the attached purchase order. And in here, we're getting the attachment. So remember when we hit the generate document, we stored the document inside the document library in the subfolder. So in here, we're just simply going and getting that URL. So it's always going to be the same URL where the purchase orders are stored because our button is creating them there. The only thing that is going to change is the name of the file, but we set the name of the file using our own code. So we know what that file name is going to be when we go to get it again. So this is looking for just the title.docx, and the title is our purchase order number, which is what the Word document is named after. So you can see again, if we test this, it's going on to two different lines, but this is looking for purchase order number 7. And if I change it to purchase order number 6 and hit test, it's looking for purchase order number 6.docx and so on. So that's how we can go and grab a file from a document library and send it as an attachment in this email, so we can actually send our vendor a copy of the Word document without having to use the share functionality or anything like that inside the document library. And once again, you've got that show before send and save to sent items. And then finally, we've just got a little message that just says a copy of the purchase order was sent to the vendor, and that displays for 5 seconds before disappearing. Okay, so let's just go through and test that. And based on everything seeming to fail on me today, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed this time. So just to show you that inside the documents under purchase orders, yeah, in fact, let's just, I think I did a last minute change, so I am just going to hopefully rename this one. Or not. Let's just see. Let's go back into purchase order. My generate document I changed, so it's PO6 and then Dell, unfortunately. So let's just modify that. One moment. This is what you get for doing last minute changes, last minute improvements. Okay, so yeah, we'll just take out vendor from there and just leave it as title. Okay, so quick new purchase order. We'll leave all of that blank. We don't have to create a reason. Let's just see if this works, because it did work. It's working this time. There you go. Look at that. So we'll send this to demo@lightningtools product demo.onmicrosoft.com, and we'll order something from Microsoft. So Surface. Let's go for 2 at 800. So we get our grand total, which is great. We'll submit that. Okay, so purchase order is requested. That'll disappear after 5 seconds. There we go. So now we have purchase order number 8, which I'm going to go through and edit. Okay, so currently pending. Our border is orange. Let's first of all prove it. Okay, signature pad wasn't signed, but we'll generate our document. Okay, and then I'm going to send the document to the vendor. So we've got our success message saying that that was sent. Let's go in and have a look at my email. And so under my sent items, not there, just there it is. Yep. Sorry, different time zone. So there is po8.docx, which we can now open up and see that document in question. There it is. with the surface that we just ordered. Okay, so that's the customized send email action that we now have in order to be able to send attachments as well as generate them. Okay, so there's a few other new things that we've got. A new send email action. We also have the copy document action, and the copy document action, we did have a move document action, but we also now have a copy document action. So that's an action button that you can use with a dynamic path, which would allow you to maybe take a document from a document library and store that in a different site somewhere else. Maybe if you needed accounts to have a copy of the purchase order or something along those lines. And we've also got the refined dynamic document generator as well. So with that document generator premium action, you can go through and browse your document library as you've seen, get access to the templates, but you can also specify those dynamically as a dynamic path. Now, a couple of other things that we've also changed. One is there's a new Customise Forms dialog. So we're just going to bring that up. And this was just a little bit of confusing. So you'll see the button no longer says Lightning Forms Customization Dialog. That's a bit friendlier. When we come into it, we used to have a green button over on the right hand side here that just said Customize. And once it was customized, you had to click the link on the left. So that's just been improved. You've got the same button that does both. So we can customize and edit customization using the same button. And the other thing that we've got, when you do go into one of your forms, so let's actually go into customizing the display form. When we are inside our display form or edit form or what have you, we also have some documentation. So we can click onto get started. And in here, you can see some of the different things that you may want to get started with. So if we were interested in styling, we can jump to styling. And if we wanted to add conditional styles, we've got our help on how to add conditional styles and so on. So we can always go back home and have a look at working with lookup columns. So we can do cascading lookups. We can use the cross-site lookup functionality that we have and so on, and learn how to use those features from within inside the designer, saving you from having to keep nipping back to our website and watching training videos. So that is hopefully going to be an improvement to finding out how to do things inside of Lightning Forms. Okay, so I think we've just got a few minutes for questions. So let's jump into our Q&A. So if you would like to post a question, if you haven't already, I'll go through those and answer you. So first of all, hopefully this one's not too late because I think this was asked right at the very start when I was waffling, but where will we be able to access the recording? So you will receive an email telling you, but you can also go to lightningtools.com and click onto webinars. So that's on the main menu header at the top. There may be some little edits and so on, taking out my ums and that sort of thing before it's published. So if you give us about 24 hours on that one, the recording will be up on our website at that point. You'll also be able to access other previously recorded webinars as well. So another question is there a limit on how many documents you can generate? No. So with the document generator, you can create as many documents as you like. They're all going to be stored inside a document library, or you can also generate them on the fly. So they will go into your downloads or your default download folder. When is the new version available? That is going to be by the end of this week. So end of play tomorrow, it should be available. So if you're already offline by then, check for it on Monday morning and you'll be able to download that. And just to let you know where you can download it from, if you go to lightningtools.com and over on the far right hand side of our menu, you'll be able to choose customers and then download center, and you'll see the new version available there. And you can add that package into your app catalog. How would you configure the form to support bilingual? So the form designer itself is bilingual in a few different languages, not every language, but the labels should be bilingual anyways. Going to pick up the context of your form. If I've understood that correctly, that should be the answer. So another question is this new version 100% backward compatible with forms created in earlier versions? Yes, absolutely. For that reason, one of the things you're going to see is actually 2 send email action buttons as well. So the original send email button is now referred to as send internal email, and then the send email is the new one, and that gives you that added advantage of also being able to send external emails as well as just internal emails too, which I didn't mention. But yeah, absolutely, it'll be backwards compatible. Okay, there's a few other questions in the chat which I'll address. Just bear with me. Okay, so I think the same question, first of all, was if you do upgrade, will all the old forms still work? So yes, absolutely. Can you set it up so that you can add new vendors if they're not in the existing list? Great question. Yes, you could. So you could actually create, so in my vendor list, and let me show you this one. So yeah, let's just get into the new form. So when we're creating our items, so under the vendor list here, so we've got the vendor type, and in here you'll notice that you've got some different options, because this is not the sort of where it's customizing the standard. This is the default lookup column, and then I go to an enhanced lookup column. So the enhanced lookup column gives you also that option to show a add new item link. So you could create a new link, or sorry, you could create a new item in that vendor list. So yeah, absolutely, that can work. And I didn't point it out whilst I'm in here, to make the cascading lookup as well. So first of all, on the vendor type, that's actually looking up from this column here, and you'll notice that office equipment appeared twice, computer hardware appeared twice, and so on. So one of the benefits that you've got is to remove the duplicate items, which it was doing successfully. And then under vendor, there's a camel query, and that camel query is then filtering based on that category. So it's taking the category column from my vendors list, and checking it against the vendor type on this form. So that's my vendor type there. So it's basically filtering that out so that we only see the items related to the vendor type that we selected. And that's how you can perform a cascading lookup on the form as well. You could also add a new button that opens up a new item if you wanted to as well. So how do I automate the green bar, allowing users to know that their request has been submitted? So that is using the show message action. So you'll see in here we've got a show a message action. So we just double click that. Here you put in your message. I won't fix my typo. You can choose the type of message. So mine was a status. I put in a title of success. You can put whatever you want, of course. You can put how many seconds you want that to display for, and then you've got the type of message. So if you wanted to show an error, you could do, or you've got warning, success, or just information. So mine was success. And that's how you can create that at any point behind action buttons and so on. Okay, so how do you sign? Yeah, we answered that one. The JavaScript code, yeah, I'll create a link to that so you have access to that. There's some written documentation for that one. Can you install forms, list actions, and documents generator on both on-prem and online farms? Great question. So Lightning Forms, yes. List actions and document generator is online only at this moment. I'm afraid it wouldn't work with SharePoint 2019. So what you saw from Lightning Forms, that would work in SharePoint 2019. there's a classic one for SharePoint 2016 and prior to that. So good question about, can we connect this to an SQL table? Not at this time, I'm afraid. Hopefully at some point that might be something that we offer, but yeah, not at the moment. Does this forms package support the accessibility standards? So this is actually something that we're working on internally ourselves at the moment. So it's not certified for WCAG standards, but it is something that we're working on. With regards to the form labels and so on, you're using the standard SharePoint controls in here. The only time that you're sort of adding any custom controls to the form itself that would be rendered to a user is if you insert images and that sort of thing. And we do provide that option to provide things like accessibility text and so on as well. And that's another reason why we also adhere to theme colors. So when you're choosing theme colors, you're not choosing crazy colors that wouldn't necessarily be 508 compliant and so on. But yeah, absolutely, that's the certification is something that we're working towards ourselves for all of our products and not just Lightning Forms. So it's only really you're going to notice when you're using Lightning Forms itself, things like the expression builder and so on, that you might find certain instances at the moment where it's not to WCAG standards, but the form itself, once that has been submitted for your users, that would be. And I think the final question is, can your document generator automate the saving as PDF? Again, not at this time. So it would save as a Word document. It has been discussed about saving as PDF as well, but currently it is just saving or generating a Word document. I know there are third-party solutions for document libraries and that sort of thing. So if you were generating the document into a document library, as I was, there are some products available that will convert those to PDF that you may want to look out for. So it could be automated, but not with Lightning tools. All right, I think. So the demonstration showed how to configure a form on a list that does not have a content type enabled. Could you create custom forms based on content types? You can, yeah, absolutely. So, so the content type itself is something that we can select, and then you can control the visibility of the forms on each of those content types too. Okay, so you should see that you know, once I get into here, we have the content type control. I only had one content type in this particular example. All right, I'm okay. Sorry, one last question I just saw pop up is, will the list actions document generator become available for on-prem? Again, sort of hopefully, we'll something we want to work towards. Our primary thing was to achieve that for SharePoint Online. But yeah, hopefully we will get to on-prem. I'm not sure I can quote any times for that at the moment. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. There was a lot of questions. I really appreciate them. Appreciate everybody attending the webinar today. And please, if you're interested in our next webinar in June, keep an eye out on that. It's going to be on the homepage of our website. It's also under the webinars link on lightningtools.com as well. What we're doing next time is not just one product, but we're going to actually have a look at how a lot of our products can work with Microsoft Teams. So we'll be covering things like the discussion board of, which is Social Squared. We'll also be looking at the Lightning Conductor and providing reports inside of Teams as well, building data visualizations inside of Teams, and there may also be a surprise product as well, which you'll be able to see. All right, so thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and hopefully look forward to seeing you next month on our Teams webinar. All right, take care. Bye-bye.